Welcome to our channel. We're back again to talk about fear, part 2.
Yes. So, what I recommend, this book, it's called Vision. I'm not sure how well you can see it. It's by a man named Ken Carey. He has 4 books in his series. By no means do you need to read them all, but I think everyone should read this because he gives some great insights and advice about fear, but also specifically about love and how love can overcome fear and how love is the true measure of everything.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. So we wanted to kind of pick up where we left off a little bit, but also go down a different rabbit hole. So we talked about heart coherence. That's kind of where we got cut off last time, and so we just kind of wanted to
Yeah, so heart coherence is a state in your body in which the basically consciousness cells in your heart are in alignment with the consciousness cells in your brain, and they're working together to make your decisions and to give you information. The easiest way for me to get into a heart coherent space is just to put my hands on my chest and slow my breathing down, and think about things that make me feel happy or grateful or blessed, and you will actually feel your heart and your brain sync up. That is a really great place and time to then ask questions like, does this make me fearful? Why is my reaction this? Because you're going to get the most true answer. Most times your heart will answer before you can even finish the question. So that's basically what heart coherence is. If you want to know more, we're happy to make a video about it, and there's tons of videos on YouTube.
Yeah, we recommend Greg Braden. He has a video on heart coherence and kind of the science behind it that is fascinating, and like how it works. So that's definitely a recommendation.
Absolutely, and actually we can put it in the link. We can put a link to it in our description.
Yeah.
But where we really want to kind of take this now and go now is taking a look at how fear plays a role in everyday life, down to our family structures, our home structures, but also you can see it in your workplace, in schools, obviously in politics and in the government, which isn't really our focus, but all of those structures that you kind of see in these big institutions are mirrored in your own homes and families and daily lives.
Yeah, they kind of impact us on a deep subconscious level, because most of us were raised in homes with a power over structure, so like the parents are in charge of the kids, and a lot of times parents are repeating patterns. They don't quite know what to do, or like in my situation, in my family, I was raised in a religious home, so religion in and of itself is usually kind of a power over structure. And when I say power over, I mean like there's people who have power over another group of people, or we're using some kind of force or coercion or something like that. So for Christianity, it would be you have to believe in Jesus Christ or you're going to hell. That's coercive because you're threatening a punishment to someone if they don't do X, Y, Z. In this case, if they don't believe in Christ and live according to his way. So parents feel this pressure, Christian parents feel this pressure to raise their kids to basically coerce them into believing in Christ, first of all. I mean, they're not going to say that they're coercing them, but in the back of their mind, they're like, what can I do? You know, it's my responsibility. I have to make sure my kid ends up being a believer, so I have to like read the Bible to them every night, and I have to like make sure that they're a good person, and I have to make sure they go to Sunday school and all that stuff to like. So if your kid is like, I don't want to go to Sunday school, you end up having to like threaten them or punish them or coerce them into going if they refuse. If you're lucky and you have like compliant children who just do whatever you say, you probably never have to use force or violence, but a lot of families have that. Oh, you have something to add to that?
I want to point out that violence isn't just, you're going to do this. Violence is the way you use your voice, the way you use consequences. If I were to say to Rachel, if you don't do this, we're not going to be friends anymore and I'm done with you. That's violent. Yeah. I'm being violent to her. I'm not touching her, but I'm still being violent to her. And I think that sometimes in these situations, people will go, well, I'm not violent. I've never put my hands on my child.
Yeah,
you don't have to.
Our culture glorifies violence in the first place. For whatever reason, it's video games, movies, like pretty much anything out there in the entertainment realm, there's violence. I mean, football is violent. So like, we've got violence everywhere and it's glorified. And so we think of violence as this one thing that's like guns and shooting and hurting people and fighting and all that stuff, but it's actually, there's microaggressions that people experience either on a systematic level or on a family level, and we're kind of talking about the more personal level right now, and we'll talk about the system level a little bit later.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm thinking of examples like if it's with family members, a lot of times it's passive aggressive. So many of us have experiences with people who are passive aggressive, and we feel like we have to placate them all the time. So we also love Teal Swan, and she has a whole video about placating, which is kind of a way of trying to make everybody happy with you, and you kind of have to change who you are and not be authentic and just like walk on eggshells everywhere to like make people happy. And that is that's based on fear, right? Because you're afraid of getting hurt or getting punished by these people.
Well, and it's a complicated thing because we have grown up and been raised in a system where there's this firm belief that human beings, and again, we need to make a whole video on this, but that human beings are inherently not good.
Yes.
So, if there isn't consequences, if there isn't, and there's a difference actually between consequences and punishment. There's a difference. If I throw my ice cream cone on the ground, the consequence of that is it's going to be dirty and I will not be able to eat it. That is a consequence. Nobody did anything to me. I'm not in trouble. That's just what happened. A punishment is I'm going to spank you if you touch this thing because, and this is causing pain, it's inflicting trauma, it's doing a whole variety of things. Consequences can have trauma, but they're not intentional. It's not like a thought out process.
It's not a
thing.
power over. It's not like the earth is like, ha ha, I got you. I have your ice cream now because it fell on me.
Like, no. And so we live in a society though where people genuinely don't believe that we can just be good to each other without consequences, without punishments. If without punishment, no one's going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Which is so not true.
Well, we have this deep subconscious belief from religion, from philosophy even, like that human beings are inherently prone to evil or completely evil. And growing up in Christianity, this was definitely taught. And it was like, what was the Bible verse I was quoting to you? The heart is deceitful above all things, who can know it? And it's sort of like, from the get-go, you're supposed to distrust your own heart and your own feelings because they're evil. So if you believe that, then you're going to believe that you need an outside power, such as God or parents or the government or teachers, whatever, that are imposing morality on you. And the only way to impose it is to use force, to use the threat of punishment, to use fear. Right?
Absolutely. So I'm just curious as to how many people can think of situations in everyday life where fear is the motivating factor. Like, for example, okay, so this is a really interesting time with COVID. Nobody's going to work, nobody's going anywhere, nobody can do anything. Why? Fear. What are we afraid of? Getting sick. Now, is that a legitimate fear? Absolutely. Are these legitimate precautions? Definitely. But it gives you a space and a time to reevaluate things. How many of you go to work every single day and hate your job and like literally would rather smack yourself in the head with a frying pan than be at that job? But you go to it because you're afraid if you don't go, you'll not have any money and you won't be able to take care of yourself or the people you care about and you'll end up homeless.
Yeah.
Now that's a big thing, and unfortunately in a lot of cases it's legitimate. But where I'm going with this is if you could change that to, okay, I'm going to go to work every day and do this job because right now I haven't figured out another way to make money, but I'm also going to take one portion of my day and dedicate it to something I genuinely love and am passionate about and see if I can turn that into something that makes me the money that I'm making from this job that I hate.
Yeah, that's an empowering thing. That's something empowering that you're like, okay, even though I have to go to this job right now because the situation in my life is, and that could be a consequence too, like it could be that if you don't go to work and you don't make money, the consequence is you're not going to have any money, which is only a problem if you're afraid to live a life without money. It's totally possible to live a life without money. You just have to know people and like do the things that you need to do to survive. But like people have done that, so it's not something that's really impossible to do. But yeah, like if you're afraid of what, say, your spouse is gonna say, like your spouse is gonna punish you basically for doing that, or your parents are gonna punish you, because if you live with your parents and you're working and you're kind of paying rent or whatever, and they're like, well, if you don't have a job, we're kicking you out.
Yep.
You know, that's a punishment. That's not really a consequence because it's imposed by somebody who has power over you. So that's kind of the difference. So we wanted to talk about, you know, this power over structure and how that instills fear in people because they're afraid of the violence that could happen to them, whether it's physical violence or emotional, whatever.
Anything. Yep.
Yeah, that they don't, that we basically are controlled by the fear. And how can we kind of break free of that? And one of the ways is to empower ourselves and say, well, what can I do that I completely have control over? And in reading Rudolf Steiner, we were talking about how meditation is one of those things that, like, it's the ultimate expression of freedom to meditate because it's the only thing that nobody else can, like, coerce you or force you. Like, it's your own decision, like, that you make freely. You're holding yourself accountable to, you know, if you meditate or not. It's totally up to you. It doesn't hurt anyone or help anyone if you meditate. It's only for yourself. So that's one of the ways that you can feel empowered, and it's out of love. Like, we don't meditate because of fear.
No.
Like, it's pretty much no. I mean, I guess some people might pray out of fear because they're afraid if they don't, then bad things will happen to them. But I think most people meditate out of love. So yeah, finding the things that we can do out of love is really important. So, this is where we want to segue into nonviolent communication.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about how we can work against the, or not against, but like take a new direction away from fear-based communication.
So first, before we explain it to you, I kind of just want to show you what it looks like. So first, we're going to do a conversation that doesn't use NVC, and then we'll do one that uses NVC because I just want to see if anyone can pick up on what the difference is.
Okay.
And then we can explain it.
I'm feeling afraid that you're going to slap me with that thing. You put it away. Thank you. I don't want that to be part of the demonstration.
I didn't.
But I kind of just demonstrated a little bit.
I did not plan to slap you with it. You have some.
I have a deep an inner child aversion to hair elastics.
You have like
because in my family,
deep-rooted trauma.
we punished each other with those.
Okay. No. So this was more so what I was thinking. This is more so where I was. This is what I was gonna do. Crazy. You never listen to me. You don't pay attention to anything that I say. You don't care about how I feel, and you just think that what's going on with you is more important than what's happening with me.
What are you talking about? Like, when have I done that?
You do it all the time.
But like when?
Like yesterday I was feeling really stressed out, and I tried to tell you about it, and you weren't listening. You just went and did your own thing. You didn't care what I had to say.
But you didn't ask me.
Why should I have to ask you? We've been friends forever. You should just know.
Well, I mean,
We've been friends
I can't
for.
read your mind.
We've been friends forever. I know when you're not okay. I don't need anyone. I don't even need you to tell me.
But sometimes, you know, people don't want to talk. So if you're upset, I'm not going to assume that you want me to talk to you.
Yeah, but how is ignoring me better?
Maybe I have something else to do. I don't know.
So exactly. It's more important than what was going on with me.
Come on.
See? And again, now you're dismissing me. You don't care.
It's actually really hard to communicate like that now.
I know, right? I was like,
I'm
God,
like, wait,
this is
what am I supposed to say?
this is a struggle.
What would I say if I was violent? And I do want to say, like, we by no means have this down. Like,
No.
we are learning about how to not be fearful. We're learning about fear. We're in this mode of learning. We're not like masters of like love and goodness and like oneness at all. But we have been learning about nonviolent communication and practicing it, and it is hard as fuck. Like, it is hard.
Well, and one of the struggles with it is, as you'll see, you can see, when you first start doing it, you feel like you sound really arrogant. And like,
it does. It sounds
dismissive.
condescending, and you're kind of like, what do I sound like?
So we'll give you an example of how this would be from an NVC place. So what I want to do is I want to come at you originally still in Jackal, and I want you to respond to me in
The
NVC.
giraffe? Okay.
No, you're going to
I'm
respond
going to
to
be the
me.
giraffe. Okay. Okay.
You never listen to me. You don't care about anything I have to say. You always think your stuff is more important, and you never pay any attention to what's going on with me.
So you're feeling like I'm not listening when you want to talk?
Yes.
And how would you like me to be when you're needing to talk?
I have a need to be heard. And so if I come to you and I'm saying, like, I'm feeling really stressed out, I would like for you to ask me why and to, like, be focused on what I'm saying when I'm saying these things.
Okay. So I hear you. And if I'm in the middle of something, then do you want me to tell you, like, what I'm doing? And, like...
Yeah, like, if you're doing something and it's not a good moment for you to speak to me, I can understand that, as long as you can say, like, hey, I'd love to have this conversation. I just need to finish this thing. Can I find you when I'm done? Because then I don't feel like you're just dismissing me and you don't care. It's like, okay, she's doing something. I respect that. That's okay because I've been there. Like, I can understand that. But then I don't feel like dismissed and like you just don't care about what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that.
Awesome. Okay. That feels so much easier. That was way less stressful. And actually what's interesting is even though there wasn't anything real behind this, like this isn't a real thing that's going on right now, there's more emotion than in the other one.
Yeah. But also, I find that what happens is it's always like this pent up energy from before you talk, because a lot of times we're like so afraid to even talk and be vulnerable and even say that there's something. And something usually makes us snap because we've been holding it in. And I mean, maybe that's just me, but like, I feel like by the time I get to the point where I'm like, I need to tell this person, like they're making me so mad or like they're upsetting me so much because so many needs have been overlooked or put aside or whatever. But it's really just because I haven't said anything. And so by the time you say something, it usually comes out as an attack because you're already afraid of saying anything. So you come out as an attack to be like on the offense because then we feel like we're in a position of power and we're less vulnerable and we're less likely to be hurt. So to be hurt. We're also less likely to be heard, though.
This is very true.
Marshall Rosenberg, who is the author of NVC, talked about how jackal, which is the way that Miranda was demonstrating that she was communicating before, when you say things like, you never listen to me, you always da-da-da, like these kind of accusatory messages, these are something called jackal, and they're intended to hurt someone, kind of be on the offensive, but they also, what they do is it's a suicidal attempt at communication, because what it means is that you're probably not going to get your needs met, like at all, because the other person, if you're shooting arrows at them, what are they going to do? They're going to get their own arrows and start shooting back. And that's why it was hard when with our first interaction, I was trying to find the arrows. I'm like, okay, how can I make this about you? How can I turn this back on you? Because that's what we usually do. And it was hard in that moment because we were pretending about something. Yeah. But I can imagine, like, if it's with your spouse or somebody who you have kind of a beef with about something, or these old things that you just kind of leave aside, it wouldn't be as hard to, like, bring those things up.
Not at all. But I also think, too, like, we definitely do arrows, but we also do placation. So the other way that could have gone is, like, because this is the beauty of NVC, is there's no placation in NVC. There's
giraffes are not nice.
Well, but they're not mean either. No. They're just honest. Like, and that's the thing is honesty, and we say this all the time, honesty is, I'll explain later. Honesty is the best policy, but there's a reason for that. Because another way this could have gone is I could have said that to her and she could have been like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't mean to. I'm so, I feel so awful.
Let me be a yes-saying jackal.
Okay, so let's do this. You never listen to me. You don't pay attention when I'm upset. You dismiss me and you blow me off. Every time I come to you with anything, you just don't care and you have no time for it.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea that you felt that way. Oh, honey, like, what can I do? Do you want me to get a cup of coffee and we can talk now?
That would be nice, actually.
Okay, I'll just stop everything that I'm doing and I'll do that. We'll just talk.
Okay. Now that sounded like really condescending because it's absolutely ridiculous. But we do this. We do this all the time. We do this with our children.
Not we, but like
no. I mean, as human beings on this planet, we do this all the time. Yeah. We do it with our children. We do it with our spouse. We do it with our boss. We do it with our friends. Now, the difference is this doesn't help me. She's not helping me. Because one, she's not genuinely into it.
Mhm.
Two, she's keeping score. So in her head, okay, I did this thing, so she better come through the next time.
And eventually, when she keeps coming to me with her problems, I'm gonna blow up and be like, no, I can't deal with it anymore, I'm done. And like, she's gonna be like, what? Like out of nowhere, because like she had no idea that inside I'm like thinking, again, you know.
And not even just again, but like, okay, great, you need to be heard, but what about me? Like, I'm in the middle of something. Why are you always coming to me when I'm trying to get things done? And like, you don't care about like what I'm trying to accomplish. Because the thing that MVC does, which is why people think it's mean, I can see why, but it's incorrect, is it makes sure that the needs of both parties are met, not just one.
Mhm.
Both parties are getting what they need.
Yeah.
And that is everything.
Yeah. And the first place you have to go is you have to be able to see that human beings have universal needs. And that was actually a real eye-opener for me, because I grew up kind of thinking with this, I don't know, with this mindset that like we don't really have that many needs, like food, shelter, water, like you know.
Well, it's also that's partially a religious thing.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't.
Only thing I need is the Holy Spirit.
But like but there's something wrong with having all these needs. Like it's vain, it's selfish, it's egotistic, it's.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it, and I think for the most part, once we realize people have basic needs, everybody has the same needs for like connection, love, peace, harmony, joy, like play. You know, like there's literally a whole list of like 100 different needs that I was like, wow, okay. And when you read them, you're like, yeah, I do need that. Like that is a need.
Mm-hmm.
And when those needs aren't met, we start to have emotions that come out, feelings of either dissatisfaction or sadness or, you know, whatever the feelings might be, anger.
And the interesting thing about that too, and where it also relates back to fear, is a lot of times for a lot of us, if we're in relationships, especially like romantic relationships, we expect a romantic partner to fill every single one of these needs.
Yeah.
The need for friendship, the need for like everything.
Our society really romanticizes.
And what that does is it kills relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Like completely kills relationships, because your partner cannot. There is no feasible, logical way that your partner could fulfill every single need that you have.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
not a
I mean,
thing.
human beings used to live in communities and villages, and I was talking to Miranda about like how we used to be in like women's circles. Like women's circles would have like this special time with just women getting together, and we would be there for each other and like communicate, and we didn't need, you know, our spouse to like fulfill that need for community and connection. But yeah, you do hear that a lot, and I think so. There's two facets to the whole fear thing. There's the communication that we have, which is based on violence and fear, and it's a way of kind of like making sure our needs get met somehow, but like almost forcing people to meet our needs. And it usually doesn't work, so we end up depressed and anxious and upset and angry all the time. And we need to drink coffee and alcohol to cope. So there's that. And then there's the other aspect, which is sort of the systems, which is the power over structures that are in our society. So maybe we could kind of talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So one of the greatest examples of that is schools. And that is because the whole model of education is you sit here, you listen to everything that comes out of my mouth, you write it down, you memorize it, you regurgitate it. Whether you agree with it or not, whether it resonates with you or not, whether it makes sense to you or not, I don't care. You listen, you regurgitate. You listen, you regurgitate. If you can't regurgitate it well enough, you're going to get a bad grade and your life is going to go down the toilets because you didn't do well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being, when I worked as a nanny, and the parents of the kids would, you know, basically threaten them and say, like, if you don't do your homework, X, Y, Z. But they would also say, if you don't do your homework, you're going to get bad grades, and if you don't do well in school, you won't be able to get into a good college, and then you'll end up working at McDonald's or being homeless. That was the, like, trajectory of their whole life if they didn't do well in school. And I'm like, what? Like, this is how, okay. So, I don't know. I grew up in more of a, like, learning is for the sake of learning kind of atmosphere. Like, for all the stuff that I got brainwashed into, homeschooling was a gift for me because learning was just for learning. Like, we wanted to learn. We wanted to have fun with figuring out how the world works. And so I'm a lifelong learner, and I have but I do see that children are being told, like, you have to learn this or else, and this is your pathway to success in life, like, whatever that means. Yeah.
And it can be really hard. Like, growing up, I had really bad ADHD. But the other thing was, like, I learned stuff really quickly. So I would figure it out before most of the class, and I would get bored. And I wasn't allowed to do my own things to entertain me, even if they weren't destructive. Like, I loved reading. I've always loved reading. I've always been obsessed with it. And I would get in trouble for reading a book in class, but I'd already be done the assignment. Mm-hmm. And so the teacher would give me more assignment that I didn't want to do. And the reason I'd rush through the assignment in the first place is because I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I would be forced to. And then,
yeah,
it would just be this, like, endless cycle. Where else can you think